All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Kevin Donlin. Kevin, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Kevin. Always happy. I'm always happy to talk to another Kevin.
Yes, we got the two Kevins
It's
today.
even more fun that way. Yes.
Yes. And I am looking forward to this conversation for sure. I want to start by giving a shout out to Vance Morris because Vance was the one who connected us and the thing that we all have in common, all three of us, is we are like kind of the old guard, the original what do they call it? OGs
Oh,
from the
gee,
Dan
yeah.
Kennedy world.
Original gangster. Yeah.
Planet Dan way back in the day. And so,
Uh-huh. I've
and
got magnetic marketing on cassette tapes. That should be proof
yes,
enough.
yes, absolutely, yes. Magnetic marketing on cassette tapes, and yes, when everything was on cassettes at that point in time. So yeah, now we're really dating ourselves, Kev.
That's okay. No going
So,
back.
yeah. So I want to, yeah, I just want to honor Vance and Vance, I'm just incredibly grateful that he connected you and I, because you and I have been getting to know each other a little bit. And that's always the best way to meet somebody is through an introduction from somebody that we both just have so much respect and admiration for and stuff.
Yeah. 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 Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I want to start by turning over to you, Kevin. I want to be able to set a little bit of context here. So let's give you an opportunity to share about, what you do, who you
Hmm.
serve, what inspires you most about the work you do and the impact you're making in the world. And I want you to give us some backstory about
Hmm.
how you got into doing what you do.
Excellent. So I'll start at the beginning. I first got introduced to direct marketing around 1994
Okay.
when I subscribed to a newsletter by a fellow by the name of Jay Abraham, and
Oh yeah.
blew my mind. I had just taken a job at a marketing communications agency in Minneapolis, and luckily getting to Jay first before I learned any really bad, awful habits, in corporate America. I just learned all about the ins and outs of marketing. And Jay is such an encyclopedia of the history of marketing. Through Jay, I got to know David Ogilvy, Claude Hopkins, Gary Halbert, all the greats, and eventually fell into Dan Kennedy's world. So I've been in marketing in one form or another since 1994. I've been called kind of a Forrest Gump of online marketing because I've also stumbled into some pretty pivotal points in the history of online marketing. I may have sold the first ebook in late 1994
Wow.
before there was an internet. Well, there was an internet, but there was no web. It was called Usenet. It was a series of bulletin boards.
Uh-huh.
And I sold an ebook, which was really a text file. It was called How to Find a Job on the Internet. This is 1994. And it was payable by check. You had to mail me the check, write your email address on the memo line, and then I would email you the book. That was
Wow.
e-commerce. I didn't know any better. It turns out I was a pioneer. I was an early adopter, I suppose. And then I was a webmaster for FedEx.com from 1995 to 1998. And when I started with FedEx, I didn't build the website, but I was handling all of the customer inquiries from people worldwide. And in 1995, FedEx.com had six web pages. I remember them all. And at that time, there was an internet yellow pages. There was no search engines, and there were so few websites that you could sell a book to find, the 200 odd websites that existed at the time. So it was pretty primitive by now, by modern standards. But I was, present at the birth of e-commerce. I was kind of a mechanic for the Wright brothers because my bosses at FedEx were doing all the heavy lifting, but I was just watching all this genius stuff go on.
Wow.
And meanwhile, I was imbibing a whole diet of direct marketing ideas from Dan Kennedy and Jay Abraham and others. And then struck out on my own in 1998. And ever since then, I've been a marketing advisor slash copywriter
Okay.
for entrepreneurs. I really serve a lot of the same market that Dan Kennedy caters to.
Mhm.
It's successful people who just want an extra edge. They're already doing great. And when I find them, I just help them do better. And typically, I'm working with founders or presidents or consultants, coaches, high-end people doing anywhere from a half million to 20 million in revenue. And I'm kind of their marketing consigliere. I will advise them, be a sounding board, refine what they're doing. And I also do a lot in direct mail.
Okay.
So I got my start in online marketing and pivoted to direct mail, added it to my toolbox around 2010.
Okay.
2010 or so, I started doing a lot more direct mail. So today, in an age of AI, it's becoming even more valuable to reach people offline in the real world because there's so much digital distraction, so much crap. And you just ask people, do you want more humanity in your life or less?
Yeah.
Do you want more content flooding your feed that was obviously generated by a robot, or do you want less of that? And that's kind of one of the premises for a lot of what I do now. I call it voice of the buyer marketing. It's based on an idea I borrowed from Eugene Schwartz, who was one of history's greatest copywriters. He said, you don't have to have great ideas if you can hear great ideas. I massage that a bit. I say you don't have to write great sales messages if you can hear great sales messages. And you'll often hear them either talking directly to your clients, your buyers,
Mhm.
or as I like to do now with AI, if you're analyzing your client reviews, whether they're from Google or Yelp, your website. But the voice, the words of people who have already given you money, they're incredibly valuable if you know how to massage them and interrogate them. And they become the world's most valuable focus group for you because these are already people who've given you money.
Yeah.
So their ideas and their words are incredibly valuable. And you can do now, I just was talking to a client this morning. My process for writing copy for years, I've always relied on testimonials to really speak authentically and to enter the conversation going on in the mind of the buyer, as Robert Collier actually never said. That's kind of a summary of what he said. But if people think it's their idea because it sounds like what they're already thinking, they're going to
Mhm.
give more time and attention to your message. So what I used to do for years when writing a project, and we can discuss one of them today, but I would read all of the client testimonials I could find for a business
Okay.
and sleep on them for 2 nights in a row. Read them, go to sleep, read them, go to sleep. And on the third day, I would wake up and start writing. So I had to trust my subconscious to connect all those dots because your subconscious is infinitely more powerful than your conscious mind. Your
Mhm.
subconscious is kind of like the Saturn V rocket. Your conscious mind is kind of like the lunar module at the top. And all that power really works wonderfully and mysteriously when you're sleeping. So I would sleep on testimonials for 2 nights in a row. This is my process, and wake up on day three and trust that the dots were being connected. Then I would start finding the patterns, writing the words. But now you can do that in 3 minutes. It doesn't take 3 days because you can upload all the client testimonials to Chat GPT or Claude, whatever tool you're using, and just interrogate them.
Mhm.
And with the right prompting and back and forth, you can pull actual words out of those testimonials. And it really does a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to writing copy these days that sounds authentic and that converts. So that's kind of a quick summary. We can go any direction you want from here.
Yeah. So what is and you don't have to name names or company names or anything like that, but what is an example of a client that you have helped get some just amazing results for that you are incredibly proud of, Kevin? What's an example of something like that?
So my favorite example, he's an old Dan Kennedy guy. His name is Steve Adams. He used to run a chain of pet stores. They were regional. And using the process I've just described before AI, so I was doing it in my head, but it was working off of his testimonials, working off of a focus group that we assembled for him.
Okay.
We mailed a sales letter nationwide for almost 5 years and grew his business from 9 locations to about 44, and
Wow.
annual revenue of 15 million to 102 million dollars. And it
Wow.
was so
Phenomenal.
it was kind of a grandmaster control in terms of direct mail.
Yeah.
But he exited his business with a very nice payday. We became very good friends. We talk regularly. But yeah, that's my favorite achievement. And it's actually only possible because of the person we may talk about in just a minute who is, introduced me to Steve.
Yeah.
And so but Steve is my favorite example of what you can do with a good sales letter that mails, nationwide for four or
Yeah.
5 years.
Well, that's a pretty phenomenal example, all right. And
It's
some pretty
yeah, and
incredible results. Yeah.
It was because of the person who introduced me to Steve had a big part in that success, but it was also just a lot of heavy lifting. And again, analyzing dozens of other successful sales letters that gave me ideas for his letter, which you can do now in minutes with AI. So it's just a beautiful time to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it starts with the work that you put in.
Yeah. And I love Steve. Steve has got such a huge heart, man. That guy is just, he is a giver through and through, and he's just
Mhm.
brilliant entrepreneur and just great all around guy, It's,
I'm very fortunate. I kind of attract clients that I end up wanting to be friends with. And I won't work with someone for long term that, when I rushed to fraternity back in college, it was, do you want to hang out in the bar with this guy?
yeah.
If so, then let's consider bringing him on. So it's to say I have the rush the frat test,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
if you're rushing a fraternity, do you guys have a connection? Would you want to hang out together even outside the house? And
Yeah.
I like to work with clients that I hang out when we see each other at events. We go out to dinner together. Steve and I went to the Peach Bowl a few years ago to watch a football game. So I love Steve and my clients, my favorite clients, a lot of them become good friends over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. I am totally with you. I mean, because the work I do when I work with a client, I'm close to them and then we're interacting regularly and stuff. And it's like, I don't work with clients who aren't friends first. And
Yeah, yeah,
so I want to see them winning, and so that's a good litmus test right there for sure.
yeah.
So
Would you go for beers? And in an age of AI, digital distraction, it becomes even more critical. Do people pass that test?
yeah,
You see
absolutely.
all these promises online, but who's behind the promise?
Yeah, yeah,
Who's behind the promise? Who's the real person here?
yes.
That's important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, okay. So now that we've got some context set, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. So I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners. And so, Kevin, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships, Kevin.
Absolutely. The man of the hour is Craig Simpson.
Okay.
He he is Dan Kennedy's mailing list
Yes.
broker, mailing list guy. Absolute salt of the earth guy, just like Steve Adams. And through meeting Craig, I met Steve. But the way I met Craig was very interesting. It was one of those I don't know if it's serendipity, good luck, dumb luck, but it was at the 2012, May of 2012 in Cleveland, Dan Kennedy's Mailbox Millions seminar, which was
Okay.
kind of legendary now. And people who went there, that was a before and after moment. It was pivotal for all of us. There was before that seminar and after. It was
Mhm.
that incredible. And Craig gave a talk on the importance of mailing lists. And really, in any promotion, the three things that count the most in order are um, the list, the creative, excuse me, the list, the offer is number two, and then the creative. So who are you talking to? What are you promising them? What are you offering them? And then how do you say it? But number one is the list. And so Craig was giving a talk about mailing lists, how to find them, how to use them, and it was just, mind blowing. And I immediately thought I got to meet this guy. So after his talk, getting in the elevator to go up to my room, and the door's about closing, and Craig Simpson walks in. And so we had a literal, so I literally, and I didn't give an elevator pitch, by the way. I wasn't trying to sell him on myself, but here we are in an elevator for 30 seconds. And I said, Craig, that was a wonderful talk. Really enjoyed it. We just hit it off and we talked, and we actually stopped at his floor, talked for another minute or two. And then we agreed to keep in touch. We connected again after the event by email. And then he said, I'm working on a project with the guy who needs a copywriter. His name is Steve Adams. I said, okay. And I had met Steve at the event too. So I said, perfect. Well, we worked together on that. And that was the big home run that we hit with Steve.
Mhm.
And through Craig, I met a dozen other people. And through Steve, I met a dozen other people. I think it's north of $1 million revenue that has come into my business just because of that introduction. That's conservative.
Wow.
But yeah, through Craig, I met Steve, and through those two guys, I've met pretty much anybody I've wanted to meet in the past 13 years. It's just been incredible. By the way, a bit of backstory. one of the reasons that letter did so well is we were mailing it to a very um, curated list of people. Craig was gay. We knew who our avatar was. It was like a 40-year-old, 45-year-old woman. The kids were at school, and she was now treating her dog as a child. And she had disposable income, lived in the suburbs, yada, 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 the whole avatar thing. Craig was finding lists of these women.
Wow.
And there were people like who subscribed to Dog Fancy magazine, who
Okay.
also had American Express cards, who lived in a house worth 300,000 or more. He went through these various selects. He was getting us mailing lists. I kid you not. Some of our mailing at a response rate of 15%.
Wow.
And that's not 1.5, that's 15%.
That's huge.
And
That's huge.
the letter was good, yeah, but the lists were like, where are
Yes.
you getting these
Yeah.
people? So it's like mailing to your family. You might get 20% or 15. So these are 15% response we were getting in some cases. And so Craig played a huge part in that role. And, I would argue it was more important that the stuff I wrote because the list is always number one.
Yeah. You know, it's
And
interesting,
so
Kevin, as you were just describing that, I'm like, you are totally describing my wife, Lisa. And we still have kids under our roof. We got four that are grown and out and got kids
right.
of their own, but we still have three under our roof. But she totally, I mean, man, she is all about ease and convenience, and she is constantly. I mean, like, and we have dog food and cat food delivered. In fact, just got delivered this morning, and it's
Sure,
a
sure.
regular schedule. That I think it gets
hmm
delivered every 2.5 weeks. We get dog food delivered. So
What's interesting though is that, people have been treating their dogs as little children for over thousands of years. There are stories of Roman women with disposable income carrying their little purse dogs. They were toga dogs then, but carrying their dogs around 2,000 years ago, spoiling them. So this is not a new thing. It's human nature. It's
yes,
psychology 101. But Craig, knowing this, we're able to tap into those the pain points and the goals and speak their language. But again, it all started with the list that Craig was getting. So yeah, Craig Simpson is the man. He's probably the most important person I have ever met. And I've met Dan Kennedy. I worked with Brian Tracy, coached with him personally for 2 years. I've met Jay Abraham a couple of times. I wrote a letter for Jay as a favor. I've written for Dan Kennedy's private clients, at least a half dozen of them. Met with Dan several times. But I think, if I have to be honest, Craig has had the biggest impact on my life. I've never told him this. I hope he hears this episode. It might make him feel good, but he's changed my life probably more than any other person.
wow, wow. So
Yeah.
let's dig deeper into this, and let's also go from the place of like we'll make sure that we see if we can't share this interview with Craig so we can hear the great things you're saying about him and stuff. And so I want to, and you kind of gave the example of Steve and stuff, but I bet there's more. And so what's an example of something where you personally, Kevin, you got to make this really big impact, and maybe it even surprised you in the moment. Maybe you're just like, wow, look at that.
Mhm.
And you also know that that would have never ever happened if not for your relationship with Craig.
With Craig.
Yeah.
Um, well, with Craig, I worked with Steve, and once I had Steve as a case study, I turned it into a sales letter and mailed it to other people who were in the Dan Kennedy world.
Yeah.
And they said, I want what you did for Steve. So, I mean, it was the easiest thing in the world to start conversations with people.
Yeah.
So it was just a domino effect. Imagine if you just have, the world's best reference client. How could you not fail to take advantage of that? And I'm not saying take advantage in a strictly monetary sense, but having Steve as my reference and Craig referring people to me for years, that was all the credibility I needed. And I was already doing well, but I just started doing really well. So it's kind of like, you can throw a pebble into a pond and it ripples. Well, we dropped a grand piano into the pond and it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it was just it's still rippling 13 years later.
Isn't that
I can't put
something?
a price on it. It's one of those, we all have, I hope everyone can, meet a person who has an impact like that. I hope everyone can put their finger on a pivotal moment in their lives because it just makes you appreciate it more. And, you know, back to my earlier point, who's behind the promise, who's behind the promotion, who's behind the business? It's always people. And it, you know, if you can't get along with your clients or your referral partners, if you just want to sit behind your laptop and pound out code, you know, there's a place for you in the world. But, you know, you may be putting a limit on your success if you're not really looking at the person who's on the other side of whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And so it's never been more important to be a human right now, with all the artificial stuff going on.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, I tell you, and you know, it's so interesting. It's doing this podcast. I get the opportunity to speak with a lot of incredibly successful entrepreneurs who are making such a big impact in the world. And the other thing that there's several things they have in common, but one, not only, so they're all established entrepreneurs, they're all using their business to make their biggest impact in the world. They also all place a very high value on relationships. And so many of them have said exactly what you just said, about, we've got this AI, and it is, I mean, it is an exciting time to be alive right now. And there are jobs that AI will take away and stuff for sure, no doubt about it. But also, these entrepreneurs like you are also saying, you know what, nothing is going to take away that real human connection. And I have heard that over and over and over. And the last couple of years, man, I've just been doubling, tripling, and quadrupling down on relationships, man. And
It's,
so
you know, I'll just leave you with this idea, when it comes to, you know, the relationship part versus the artificial part. Um, I work with a lot of people to help them take messages that are working online and take them offline. And people think it's old school, it's dinosaur marketing. Well, it's tangible, it's real.
yeah,
And you know, remember, AI is artificial intelligence. It's not human, it's not divine, it's not even real. It's, you know, it's bits and bytes. It's electrons moving around through the ether. So anything you can do to get real and tangible, with the people in your life, it's going to improve your relationship. So people always turn up their noses when I talk about thank you notes. It's the one of the world's easiest sales letters to write because it's going to persuade people that you're, you know, a person they may want to pay attention to. You don't want to be transactional about it and ask for a sale in a thank you note, but just start the relationship or build the relationship. The tangible appreciation is incredibly important. I had a client, I'm working with him now. He met with two very highly qualified prospects at a trade show 2 weeks ago. Last week, I said, what's your outreach so far? I sent him all emails. I said, have you sent him thank you notes? He said, no. Of course, he said no. I said, all right, here's what you're doing. It's 3 o'clock. You have 3 hours to get to the FedEx drop box. You're going to write thank you notes to these two guys, the high qualified guys, and you're going to send them FedEx. He said, "What's the message? You know, ask. Just be yourself. Don't screw it up. You know." And he actually texted me his message. Says, "Yeah, it's fine, but don't overthink it. But just thank you. It was great chatting with you. Thanks for stopping by our booth. Let's keep the conversation going." It was just trivial stuff, but the point is, we sent it FedEx. So he sent me an email yesterday and said, "Hey, one of the guys just replied and he wants a price list." I said, "Okay, good. Don't send him the price list, but you know, we've got the conversation going. If you send him the price list by email, then you're going to be shocked by price." So that's another discussion. There's more strategy behind it than just the thank you note. We actually FedExed him a calculator yesterday saying this will help you do the math about prices. When we talk on Wednesday, I'll give you a call. But none of that would have happened without the very first touch, which was the thank you note by FedEx. Could we have been more elaborate and more strategic? I didn't know what he was going to do after the trade show, so that was off the cuff. But it's hard to screw up appreciation.
yeah,
No one's going to hate you for sending them a thank you note as long as it's genuine.
yeah,
And yes, I do mean handwritten. I know there are a million and one handwriting bots that can do quote unquote real handwriting. I really emphasize that this needs to be written by you,
yeah,
and because people can sniff out the difference between real handwriting and robot handwriting.
yeah.
we can, people aren't stupid. So this is my little sermon about, real appreciation.
Yeah,
Because, I think it was William James, the psychologist, who said the greatest need in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. And
absolutely.
we craving is a strong word, but that's what he said. That you crave drugs, you crave caffeine, you crave love, you crave appreciation. So if you
Yes.
can do that, you're kind of a very ethical drug pusher. You're pushing something to people that they already want, and it makes you feel better.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so, the easiest, most effective sales letter could be a FedEx thank you note. That's, you don't need to hire me to do that. You can't screw it up. But that's an example of what I like to do. FedEx is one of my favorite tools because it's 100% open rate and it gets read with 100% interest. You need your message to be read and it needs to be read with interest. FedEx gets that for you.
Yeah. That is brilliant. That is brilliant. I am, and you are so right on the appreciation. And because no matter who somebody is, no matter how successful they are, no matter how big of a business they run, there's not a person on the face of this earth that gets too much appreciation. Every one of us wants more appreciation.
Mhm.
And when we just show up that way, I mean, look at the example that you just gave. Sending a FedEx was just a thank you note and just a note of appreciation, you know, and that's what got a call back. And
Yep, it
it
got the email and it's going to say it sets up the next step. So that's the other thing is that, if you give if your first touch is 100% appreciated, no one's put off by it, then it makes the other touches easier to do.
absolutely, absolutely, man, good stuff. Well, Kevin, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today and just share from your heart. I'm sure I know there's people listening to this right now going, man, Kev, I love the way Kevin Donlin shows up. I love who he is. And maybe there's some folks that are like, man, that was results that he got for Steve. And some other clients, man, I maybe he can help me. And so, how can people find out more about any websites, any resources we can share with them, Kev?
Yeah, the two good ways to find me are my website is clientcloningsystems.com. That's www.clientcloningsystems.com. The other
Okay.
good place is LinkedIn. Find me. There's a little shamrock next to my name, Kevin Donlin on LinkedIn. You'll know me when you see me. And I post there almost every day, and I'm happy to start conversations there. Or you can find my contact information on my website. Also, keep your eyes peeled for my new book, which should be coming out in a month or two. Working title is Voice of the Buyer Marketing, which is a long treatise based on what we just touched on today. But it's about you don't have to write great sales messages if you can hear them.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Well, Kev, any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
No, Kevin, I want to thank you for having me. I appreciate you. Um,
Absolutely.
And yeah, appreciation is the idea of giving value to something. Something appreciates, it goes up in value.
Yes.
That's one definition.
Yeah.
And the other definition is letting someone know that you value them. So
Yes.
both of those definitions are worth going after. Those are good outcomes, and I just try to always keep that in mind when I'm working with people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you and I are definitely totally on the same page when it comes to that. And I have just made it a point to just show appreciation to people every single day, and not just people that are clients of ours, but just heck, my wife, my kids, the gal at the restaurant who serves me lunch, the gal at the post office, whatever. Just show appreciation to people,
Precisely.
and yeah, it makes them feel good, and it makes you feel good too. So, well, Kev,
And
thank you.
AI can't compete. You can't
That
outsource your personality to the cloud.
that's right.
It's uncopyable. It's one of the last refuges. Things that cannot be copied is your caring for other people, your real
Absolutely.
emotions.
Absolutely. Well, Kev, thanks again. Really appreciate you coming on today, and I'm excited to get this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs. So thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate you.
You bet.